Yeah, nothing else has changed. The Charlotte Hornets, they lose again, this time to the Sacramento Kings.
Credibility around the league about how they're going to run the organization in that community in Charlotte, where this is a very popular, has been a very popular organization.
Steve Clifford not taking any questions and not happy about it.
The Charlotte Hornets drafted LaMelo Ball with the 3rd overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft, and it didn't take long for them to realize that he was the real deal. In their relatively short history as a franchise, the Hornets have never seen a player like Ball who can pass and shoot with the league's best. But even after nailing a high draft pick with star potential, the Charlotte Hornets have been mostly stuck in the mud and very far from relevancy. It hasn't helped that LaMelo Ball has missed extended time with injuries during the past 2 seasons, as the team has plummeted without him. Still, Charlotte has firmly committed to Ball with a massive contract extension and with their recent draft decisions. But as the Hornets continue to tumble, they could be facing a tougher decision on their point guard's future. With the face of the franchise about to get more expensive and the team woefully low in the standings, LaMelo's days in Charlotte could be numbered. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Make sure you follow us on Snapchat because we've been making a huge push there to give you guys a look behind the scenes. And now that we got all of that out of the way, cue the intro. We made $1,100 off of a $20 entry on Prize Picks. And it wasn't just me, it was everyone that followed these picks on my Instagram story. And the best feeling is the amount of people that made money as a result of this. I mean, bam, bam, bam. Bam! My DMs were flooded, so the best part for me was seeing you guys make money as well. But we're not done yet. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, use my promo code microphone to double your deposit up until $100 on Prize Picks. And I give away my picks on a daily basis for free on my Instagram story and now my Snapchat story. We're having so much fun doing this. I'm so happy that I made you guys some money. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? LaMelo Ball joined a Charlotte Hornets team coming off of a 9th place finish in a weak Eastern Conference. Not good enough to get an invite into the NBA's Orlando bubble. Charlotte had a stable of guards already on the team before adding LaMelo Ball. These guards included players like Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, and Malik Monk. Head coach James Borrego went with Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham as the starting backcourt after they finished as the team's top 2 scorers in the previous season. Through the first 20 games, the starting backcourt remained the same, garnering mixed results as the team began 9-11. Charlotte brought LaMelo Ball along slowly as his playing time gradually increased throughout the first 20 games of his career. And after going scoreless in his debut, LaMelo became more comfortable and productive with more playing time and was able to become the youngest player in NBA history at the time to record a triple-double at 19 years and 140 days old in a win over Atlanta. He was averaging nearly 12 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists in 25 minutes a game before he made his first career start. With Terry Rozier out for the first 2 games of February, LaMelo stepped in playing next to Graham, and Charlotte played well, winning in overtime against the Miami Heat and narrowly lost to a good Philadelphia 76ers team. And instead of returning LaMelo Ball to the bench when Terry Rozier came back, James Borrego decided to do something unprecedented, starting all 3 of his point guards. And the craziest part of all is it worked. Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, and LaMelo Ball would become the Charlotte Hornets' best lineup with an offensive rating of 116 as they outscored their opponents by 60 points with all 3 on the court. Meanwhile, the Charlotte Hornets elevated their record above 500 in mid-March, while LaMelo Ball continued to flash star potential, dishing out highlight reel passes with flair while sprinkling in big scoring nights. Following the recent 3-point guard trend, Charlotte found success just like Oklahoma City had the previous year. The OKC Thunder rode the 3-guard group of Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Dennis Schroeder to an unexpected playoff berth in 2020, and the Charlotte Hornets hope to do the same in 2021. But their chances took a major turn for the worse in late March. LaMelo suffered what appeared to be a season-ending wrist injury in a blowout loss to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, LaMelo would have surgery a couple days later, and while he was set to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, Charlotte still didn't know if he was going to return that season. The Hornets hung tough in Ball's absence, hovering around 500, but ultimately it ended up being too much, slipping to 30-32 by the end of April. But after missing 21 games, games, LaMelo returned to help Charlotte get a win over Detroit, but the Hornets only won 2 games the rest of the way and ended the season on a 5-game losing streak. They finished the shortened 72-game season with a 33-39 record, which was only good enough for 10th in the East. However, the good news for the Charlotte Hornets was that they qualified for the NBA's brand new inaugural play-in tournament, giving themselves a chance to make the playoffs with just 2 more wins. But this didn't really make much of a difference. The Charlotte Hornets became allergic to defense at probably the worst time of the year, as they would lose 144-117 in Indiana as their season came to an end. LaMelo was named Rookie of the Year after averaging over 15 points, 6 assists, and nearly 6 rebounds per game. Charlotte was so convinced that they had their point guard of the future that they even decided to break up their 3-point guard lineup, trading Devontae Graham to the New Orleans Pelicans for a first-round pick. And the Charlotte Hornets did this because they believed that they had the perfect replacement for Devontae Graham in the 2021 NBA draft, where they would build their core around LaMelo Ball, taking James Bouknight with the 11th overall pick and pairing LaMelo Ball with his center of the future in Kai Jones with the 19th overall pick. Kai Jones was a versatile big man that had already flashed potential to develop a jump shot in college, but the problem was he was very raw and didn't get much playing time. Bouknight believed that the Charlotte Hornets had finished building their backcourt of the future by pairing him with LaMelo, saying,
"We're gonna be one of the better young teams in the league. Just me and LaMelo in the backcourt, the way we play, the different type of swagger we have, and creativity is just we're gonna be box office. That's the only way I can put it."
And for a brief period of time, it looked like that was going to be the reality. The Charlotte Hornets would open up the 2021 to 2022 season with remarkable results, opening out with a 5-2 record, but that would be about it. Following this incredible start, things would take a turn for the worse. The Hornets would lose 5 games in a row, but they would bounce right back with a 5-game winning streak. In a similar trend to the previous season, Charlotte hung around the 500 mark early in the season, reaching a high water mark of 26-20 in late January. LaMelo went up a level, responding to his coach's challenge to take the reins in order to help the team win. He became the team's unquestioned floor general, the engine for their offense, and must-see TV with creative passes and big shooting nights becoming standard protocol for one of the league's rising stars. In one of his best performances of the season, LaMelo Ball dropped a career-high 38 points as Charlotte nearly beat the Boston Celtics in the TD Garden. It wasn't a surprise when in early February, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver named LaMelo Ball an All-Star reserve, becoming the 8th player in franchise history to earn an All-Star nod. But soon after the announcement, the Hornets lost their 6th game in a row, dropping their record to 28-28 before entering the All-Star break with a losing record. LaMelo represented the Hornets well at All-Star weekend, scoring 18 points during the All-Star game before returning to Charlotte for their playoff push. Charlotte would go 14-9 down the stretch, finishing with the team's first winning record since the team's last playoff appearance during the 2015-2016 season. But in a deep Eastern Conference, that was only good enough to finish 10th as they entered the play-in. For the second year in a row, they developed an allergy to defense in a must-win game as they got obliterated by the Atlanta Hawks 132-103. It was another disappointing finish for one of the league's youngest teams that were boasting with potential. But as LaMelo improved in his second season, so had the Charlotte Hornets. His numbers told part of the story of his rise to All-Star status. You had to watch him play to do it justice. The Hornets had to be excited to have a player that even casual fans would want to watch. But unfortunately, things were about to take a turn for the worst. The 2022 offseason included multiple major developments for the Charlotte Hornets, some that would be crippling for the franchise's future. Despite 10-win improvements in back-to-back seasons, Charlotte decided to fire James Borrego after 4 seasons as head coach. In June, they announced that they were hiring Golden State assistant Kenny Atkinson to be their new head coach, who accepted the job as the Warriors were playing in the 2022 NBA Finals. This was a home run hire. Kenny Atkinson already had a remarkable history with the 2019 Brooklyn Nets, a team that was primarily composed of castaway players and high potential rejects like D'Angelo Russell, or talent that they developed themselves like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jarrett Allen, Harris LeVert. This team was electric and good enough to finish 6th in the Eastern Conference, which made Kenny Atkinson a prime candidate candidate for this job, but unfortunately, it wouldn't come to be. Despite agreeing to terms on a contract was never signed, and a little over a week later after the finals, Kenny Atkinson changed his mind, announcing that he'd remain in Golden State, and Charlotte's hands were tied at this point. They would essentially decide to date their ex-girlfriend, despite their new girlfriend building something there, hiring Steve Clifford, who had coached the team for 5 seasons before Borrego and led the team to 2 playoff berths. Less than a week later, things got way worse. Miles Bridges, one of Charlotte's rare draft hits and franchise building blocks, was arrested following an alleged assault of his former girlfriend and mother of his 2 children. He was charged with 3 felony domestic violence charges, which led to a long legal battle, and he ultimately missed the entire 2022 to 2023 season. On top of that, James Bouknight, their supposed shooting guard of the future, was also arrested, but this was a little bit different. James Bouknight was arrested on suspicion of DUI right before the season started, and for the very cherry on top, the team announced that LaMelo Ball would miss the season opener with a left ankle sprain that he suffered in the preseason. That injury ultimately costed him 13 games of the season before he would make his return in mid-November. But in his 3rd game back and first home game of the season, LaMelo would re-injure the same ankle when he stepped on a fan's foot while chasing down a loose ball. That ended up costing him another month before returning in mid-December. But Charlotte's season had already gone sideways by then, as they fell to 7-21 that night as part of an 8-game losing streak. LaMelo returned to form as the calendar flipped to 2023, often leading the Charlotte Hornets in scoring and usually in assists. But the team kept losing and suffered losing streaks of 5 and 7 in January and February. But the season's death knell came in late February when LaMelo Ball fell awkwardly during a win over Detroit. It turns out that he had fractured his other ankle, ending his season. LaMelo once again put up great numbers in year 3, but he did this in only 36 games, and Charlotte finished with the league's 4th worst record at 27-55. Now, during the 2023 draft lottery, the Charlotte Hornets would get very fortunate, getting the 2nd overall pick in a moment that eerily resembled the franchise's misfortune in 2012. That year, the then Bobcats missed out on landing Anthony Davis and instead drafted Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who was out of the league at age 26. In 2023, they fell a pick short of landing generational prospect Victor Wembanyama, who the Spurs took in a no-brainer move 1st overall. That frustration aside, the Charlotte Hornets had a major decision to make with the 2nd pick. The next best prospects were either point guard Scoot Henderson or forward Brandon Miller. Would Charlotte draft Scoot to pair with or replace LaMelo, or would they avoid Scoot altogether because he played the same position as LaMelo? The Hornets chose the latter, taking Brandon Miller with the 2nd overall pick. Although GM Mitch Kupchak said he believed that they took the best player available as Charlotte sidestepped any point guard drama, the Hornets firmly cemented their commitment to LaMelo later that summer, signing him to a 5-year max extension worth up to $260 million, the biggest contract in team history. But that wasn't all Charlotte would do. They brought back forward PJ Washington on a 3-year deal, and Miles Bridges returned on a 1-year contract, giving the Hornets hope that this season would be much different than last. But things went south fast once the games began. Despite LaMelo's brilliance, Charlotte didn't win consecutive games until right before Thanksgiving, starting out 5-9. LaMelo had big games during that stretch, including a 30-point triple-double in a loss to Dallas and a huge clutch performance in a surprise overtime win over Boston. But in their 15th game against Orlando, LaMelo took a hard fall and had to be carried to the locker room. He had suffered yet another ankle sprain that would keep him out for at least the next 6 weeks. And with LaMelo gone, history once again repeated itself. Only this time, it was of the likes that we've never seen. The Charlotte Hornets went on a catastrophic losing streak, going 3-17 over their next 20 games, without LaMelo, including an 11-game losing streak. The reason why you probably didn't hear about this more was because it was overshadowed by another legendary free fall and losing streak. Even LaMelo's return couldn't stop the bleeding, as the Charlotte Hornets got blown out by the lowly San Antonio Spurs. As it stands, the Hornets score the 3rd fewest points per game, while allowing the 6th most points per game. They haven't won a single game by double digits, while owning the league's worst point differential. The Pistons, Wizards, and Spurs, who each have have multiple double-digit wins, have all gained national notoriety for their losing. The Charlotte Hornets have been similarly bad, but they've been doing it in a more quiet way, as they sit 20 games below 500. Losing LaMelo Ball for long stretches hasn't helped, but even when he's played at an all-star level, they're still losing at an alarming rate. And unlike the other bad teams in their orbit, they've had some measure of continuity on their roster, even though their recent draft history outside of LaMelo Ball is a mixed bag. The 2021 draft class in particular was disastrous. James Bouknight, the guy who was supposed to be box office with LaMelo Ball, has barely played at all this season, racking up DNPs. Kai Jones didn't even make it to the start of this season after his odd situation that we covered in a previous video. Mark Williams, who was a first rounder in 2022, Nick Richards, who was a second rounder in 2020, have actually proven to be capable big men, albeit ones that won't really move the needle in the big picture. Washington, a 2019 lottery pick, has consistently produced double-digit scoring seasons, but he's probably better known for his nationality for his child support battle with Brittany Renner as opposed to his basketball exploits. The craziest part is the Charlotte Hornets have had talent before. They had the Martin twins as rookies in 2019 after drafting Cody in the second round and signing Caleb, who went undrafted. And they decided to keep the wrong twin. Cody has been MIA with injuries while Caleb has blossomed into a quality role player with the Miami Heat. And then of course, there's Miles Bridges, drafted in 2018, who literally missed an entire season because of his off-court behavior and whose future in Charlotte seems clouded. It hasn't helped that Malik Monk, a 2017 lottery pick, has gone on to thrive elsewhere as well. While Scoot has had his struggles in Portland, Brandon Miller has shown promise, but it's still too early to tell how his career will play out. The same goes for fellow rookie first rounder Nick Smith Jr. They've had capable veterans in Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward over the last few seasons, but they don't project as starters on a contender and have each missed chunks of time with injuries. Even with an emerging superstar, the collection of players has come woefully short of relevancy, and it could spur major change in Charlotte. During the press conference last summer for LaMelo's extension, Mitch Kupchak was asked if securing LaMelo would help attract players to Charlotte, knowing that they had an all-star for the foreseeable future.
Well, what's going to make Charlotte more desirable? As much as I like LaMelo, he's not going to be the primary reason, why Charlotte is more desirable. I think we would both admit if we win games and we become a winning organization, then you'll see that players, will want to be drafted by Charlotte, they'll want to be traded to Charlotte, and when they're free agents, they'll want to come to Charlotte. So yes, LaMelo is a big part of that. As I mentioned earlier, he's our cornerstone, but winning will solve all those other problems.
The winning hasn't happened, which begs the question, should Charlotte cash in their star, who's already locked up a long-term deal, by trading him to the highest bidder? There's no question in my mind that the Charlotte Hornets could fetch some serious offers for LaMelo if they put him on the trade block, even with his recent injury history. Woj recently reported on a Threads reply that right now they have no intention of moving LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller, who the Charlotte Hornets rightfully see as their building blocks. It's also unlikely Charlotte trades LaMelo this season because of the so-called poison pill provision, which makes it financially difficult to trade players who have signed rookie extensions before their new contract kicks in. That's why the Golden State Warriors waited until after last season in order to trade Jordan Poole to the Washington Wizards, which we've made a huge video on recently. LaMelo Ball's salary is about to dramatically increase beginning next season, and with the Charlotte Hornets record still in the gutter, they could move off that cost to reset the franchise once again. There has already been major changes in the Queen City within the past year, and more could be coming soon. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest player of all time, but one of the worst owners ever, sold his majority stake in the team in August. It wouldn't be too surprising if a coaching change followed with new majority owners in town. They have a coach in Clifford who the team once fired, only to bring him back 5 years later after the guy they really wanted thought he was better off as an assistant somewhere else, as opposed to being a head coach for the Charlotte Hornets. One thing hasn't changed over the last season and a half. Whether LaMelo Ball plays or not, the Charlotte Hornets have been bad. Unless that somehow changes in the near future, the chances of moving the face of the franchise will only grow. Let me know in the comment section down below, what should the Charlotte Hornets do to improve their team? Is it time to move on from LaMelo Ball? And if so, when should they do it? Should they do it next year, in 2 years? I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.